Hello friends, Dr. Nels here, and today we're going to visit with you about my ego and your ego. Welcome back, friends. Dr. Nels here, coming to you with content on life, leadership, business, and family, building your values and principles so that you can be the best version of you. And as we said, today we want to visit with you about my ego and your ego. And so when I say my ego, we have probably over the years somewhere talked about mentors. And Kale, let's do a vlog on mentors. But one of my mentors is a man named Dr. Doug Ford out of Brush, Colorado, whom I love very deeply through all the mentorship he's given me over the years. And one of those pieces of advice one day, and I'll never forget it, was about my ego. And I was driving down the road as usual, and he was too, and we were heading to, yards or whatever we were doing that day. And Doug, in a very kind, non-confrontational way, but also knew I'm a lifelong learner and coachable, began to discuss with Nels and his ego. And I'll never forget the conversation, ever. And I'd never had anybody just come out and talk to me about my ego like he had. And this is well over 10 years ago. And at the end of the day, he was coaching me to be the best version of me, and that he had enough interactions with me through our consulting group that, and heard me speak enough, that my ego was maybe getting a touch big for myself. And that maybe there were some times I needed to check my ego, check it at the door. Think of others a little bit more than myself, maybe focusing less on winning the conversation, winning the disagreement, focus a little less on thinking I needed to be right. And so for all of us, there's a powerful lesson there, because I believe everyone, even the most humble people on the planet, we all have some level of ego. Now, I believe, like many things, it's not just ego, no ego. I believe there's a scale in there, and I talk about scales quite a bit. Here's the scale of ego, here's the most arrogant, egotistical person on the planet, and here's the least arrogant, egotistical person on the planet. And I believe most all of us fall somewhere in the scale in between. And I don't know where you're at. I know where I've been. I know maybe where I'm at, and it maybe can fluctuate over time to a certain degree, but egos get us into trouble. I challenge you to think about the last conversation you had and humbly reflect on, were you trying to just be right? Were you trying to just win? Was it a conversation with your spouse that they had their view and you had your view, and you ended up just going your separate ways, agreeing or not even agreeing that you were right? How about in business, and you're sitting around a table with people trying to discuss a differing opinion or a disagreement? How did you handle that? Did you let your ego go? Did you check it at the door? Did you solve the disagreement or differing opinions on what's best for the organization? What's best for the relationship, regardless of your thought process? Because many times we're not right. Or maybe we're right, but yet another point of the conversation coming from someone else helped add to the correctness, or add value, brought value for resolution. And so I would challenge all of us as we go and as we grow to think about our ego. because I do believe if you think about your ego, it will become less. Cale?
So how do you differentiate between ego and confidence? Because you want to have confidence in what you're doing, right? And
Yeah.
in your work, but it can very easily be misconstrued as an ego. So how do you differentiate between the two and have confidence in what you're doing, but eliminate or minimize having an ego?
So it's funny you said that. So this last weekend, my son and I spent a fair amount of time together, and at one point we were driving to Manhattan, so we had a 2+ hour car drive, and we actually talked about, the difference between confidence, pride, and arrogance, which leads to maybe an unhealthy ego. And how do you tell the difference, or how do you behave appropriately? So in my mind, my mother taught me about being prideful as a Lindbergh George, and confidence and pride are a very, very good thing, but left unchecked leads to, in some people's minds, your appearance may start to be arrogant in their view of you, which then can be led to you maybe have an ego. So I believe confidence, pride, arrogance, ego, there's a little bit of a chain there. As long as we're thinking about arrogance and ego, keeping those in check, we should just have confidence. Pride, I believe, can start to wage on the side of unhealthiness even. And it's our job to remain confident, yet keep all of those things in check, always being humble to what we need to work on, what we need to learn, and our outward appearance isn't too prideful. And I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
So we always talk about being coachable,
Yeah.
and being teachable.
Mm-hmm.
Is being coachable and being teachable, is that a characteristic of somebody who does not have a big ego?
Yes. Yeah. In the world I live in and coaching people, I can tell you people that will be coachable over the course of it depends on the person, but within about 30 minutes, I can have a pretty good gauge if someone's going to be coachable and teachable based on the questions that I ask them. So, for all of us, in order to keep our ego in check and arrogance in check or gone, we have to remain coachable and teachable in a humble manner. Otherwise, if we're not coachable and teachable, you're starting to get on the spectrum of too much ego, too much arrogance, and you believe that you know more than you really know.
Right. So there's definitely a checks and balances system in it.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing, all the way to the point of narcissism, right? And I've been involved in now 4 situations with extreme levels of narcissism and being coachable. My last one was with a person in their job and asking them what they could do better about their job. I won't go into the depth or detail, but specifically in what they were doing, what could they do better at that aspect? And they answered nothing that I could think of. And they're barely 30 years old. And so we can, if you're leading people, anytime you ask someone, hey, what do you think you need to be working on? What are my weaknesses? What are your weaknesses? What do we need to get better at? And that really, there's some other simple questions that I won't go into, but help us understand where someone is. So, did we answer your questions?
Yeah, that's great.
So anyway, thanks for the questions, Cale. I hope you got more out of it with his questions and what we've talked about. Keep your ego in check, because, as I said, we all have a level of ego. We can't be arrogant. We can have some confidence, certain level of pride, but keep that in check. And if you remain coachable and teachable and keep this under focus, you won't have issues there. Hope you like this content. Thanks for joining us today, friends. Click subscribe here, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.